Welcome to High Impact Living, the motivational speaking of Rick McDaniel, the noted author, international communicator, and senior pastor at Richmond Community Church in Richmond, Virginia.
Whether you are here live at the Glen Allen campus in Richmond, Virginia, home of the World Cycling Championships, or if you're joining us on the internet campus or on High Impact Living broadcast, however you might be hearing this, maybe Amazon, maybe you bought this message, or maybe you just stumbled across it on Audible, or somebody sent it to you. We're glad you're listening and watching. We're going to read out of both the Old Testament and New Testament in the Bible. In the Old Testament, it's Psalm 118, verse 24. And it says this: "This day belongs to the Lord. Let's celebrate and be glad today." Over in the book of Philippians, chapter 4, verse 4 and verse 13. Verse 4 says, "Always be glad because of the Lord." I'll say it again, be glad. Verse 13 says this: "I can do all of this through him who gives me strength." Now, I'm just going to confess to you something that some of you know very well, which is there are a few things that I would rather speak about than what I'm going to speak about today. I love to motivate people. I love to inspire people. I love to talk about having an optimistic, positive, faith-filled attitude. God has given me the opportunity to do that and write about it in many settings, some church, some even secular, and I always enjoy the opportunity. But I especially like in my church here where I pastor, when I get to talk about this and can just look you in the eye and just tell you, this is one of the keys to happiness. You cannot be happy if you do not have a positive, optimistic, faith-filled attitude. It is a habit that you must practice. You can choose to practice it or not, but I'm telling you, your attitude is enormously impacting on your personal happiness. And I'd rather have you learn this right now, because it is so impacting on what happens in your life going forward. Some of you know that Abraham Lincoln is just a big influence on my life in terms of his leadership. He's not a Christian influence, but he's a leadership influence. And I have all kinds of Lincoln memorabilia in my office here at the church, in my office at home, and I just know a lot about him. I've been to all the Lincoln sites that you can mention, and I'm thrilled about all of that. And I love to quote Lincoln, and here's a great Lincoln quote: "Most people are about as happy as they make up their minds to be." Most people are about as happy as they make up their minds to be. And that's the truth. That is essentially what I want to talk to you about today. Having the right kind of attitude. Having a positive attitude about life. Now, I read this recently in Dear Abby, and I just love Dear Abby. People get a kick out of me quoting Dear Abby, but she gives me a lot of material over the years, so I like her. So here it is. "Dear Abby, I've been married for 8 years, and my husband is a wonderful spouse when it comes to almost everything. But a couple years ago, he started buying me potted plants rather than cut flowers because you get more for your money. And he buys me these plants 3 or 4 times a year, and I've asked him to please go back to cut flowers. Despite this, he continues to buy me potted plants. I don't want to seem ungrateful, but I'm really frustrated. My complaint may seem shallow." Okay. Let's just pause for a moment and review the facts. You have a man who buys you gifts 3 or 4 times a year. You describe him yourself as a quote-unquote wonderful husband. But because he buys you potted plants instead of cut flowers, you just are so frustrated you need to write Dear Abby about it. Let me share with you some of Dear Abby's words. "You appear to have married a man who is not only practical but unimaginative when it comes to gift buying. Oh, like no other man you know." Come on. I don't even want a response from wives, but I just would ask this question. How many of you are married to a man who is, how shall we say, practically oriented and unimaginative in gift giving? I go on. Many women would be glad that their spouse remembered any special occasion. Friends, listen. This is it. What do you want to focus on today? The wonderful husband that you've been married to for 8 years who buys you gifts 3 or 4 times a year, or the fact that this madman refuses cut flowers and will only buy potted plants? Here's a thought. Grow the potted plant, cut the flowers yourself. There you go. Problem solved. This is the wisdom that Pastor Rick needs prayer about so I can continue to dispense it to you. Listen, friends, attitude, and I'm saying this and I mean it, is more important than facts. It is. It is. Your attitude, the way you choose to look at life. Attitude means literally a mode or a way of thinking. How do you think about your life? Not the facts of your life, but how do you think about your life? You get to choose each day what your attitude will be like. You can choose to be happy. You can choose to not be happy. Let me just give you a little backstory for this morning. We were supposed to have a guest worship leader here, and then he decided he wasn't coming. So that created a bit of a problem. So we went to Plan B, and we asked Dave Hicks, who is one of our longtime singers here at the church, if he would be the worship leader this morning. He said he would. He came to practice. He practiced with the band on Thursday night. 8 o'clock this morning, I received information that Dave, who happens to be the general manager of a store around here, got called and said there's an emergency and he has to come in. So he's the general manager. He's the top guy, so he has to go. So now we have no one to lead our worship. So now we have to scramble together. We have 2 singers up here on the stage this morning who didn't even go to practice, and this is the situation we find ourselves in. It is not ideal when you're on option number 3 in a significant church like this that broadcasts its entire service. Not an ideal situation. What are you going to do? So I could stand up here this morning all grumpy and surly, and just be, how would that go over? You don't come here to be listening to Pastor Rick being grumpy and surly. You come here to be inspired and motivated. I have to choose to be happy in spite of the circumstances. Now let me mix a little in for you. This morning I'm sitting in my kitchen having my breakfast of champions, getting ready to go to work for you people at this church. My dog is outside in my driveway enjoying this cool weather, and all of a sudden I hear the dog start to bark. And then, and I'm not making this up, I hear a woman scream. I mean like a blood-curdling scream. And I'm thinking, holy smokes, my dog has attacked this woman and ripped her leg right off. So my wife actually beats me out the door. And this is the scene she sees. My dog is still in the driveway. The dog has not moved. The dog went from laying down to sitting up. The dog has not moved. The dog has not bitten the woman, and the woman still has both of her legs fully functioning. And the question I would ask you is this: why are you screaming on Sunday morning because my big, fluffy, white dog was barking at you? Now, somebody in the first service gave me the answer. They said that she mistook the dog for a polar bear. And I said, that's very good. This is a sharp crowd I speak to every week. That's pretty good, because she's big and she is white. But this dog wouldn't, harm anybody. She's just a big baby that is wrapped up in fur. This is life, friends. This is the way life is. I mean, you're on to plan C, People are screaming about nothing. I mean, this is life. You can't control it. You can't make it be smooth. I've mentioned before, my wife has told me, don't keep saying this. People I want to keep hearing how great things are for you. But I've mentioned how I'm sort of on this hot streak. But I just want to tell you, in the middle of my hot streak, something really bad has happened. Really bad. Really bad. I mean really bad. And now I got to deal with it. And I mean, it's bad. And guess what? Even when you're on a hot streak, it's not like the universe says, Rick's on a hot streak, so nobody can do anything bad. Nothing bad can happen because it's got to stay because I'm on a roll. Call me butter because I'm on a roll. Well, hey, it doesn't work that way. Life just does things and stuff happens, and you have to decide, are you going to be happy or miserable? Your attitude determines your happiness. Write it down. Your attitude determines your happiness. Now, I'm speaking to primarily people who are followers of Christ, although I'm always speaking to a good number of people who have yet to step over the line of faith, who have yet to say they are a follower of Christ, that they want Jesus to be the leader of their life. But to those of you that have stepped over the line of faith, Jesus is the leader of your life, and you're endeavoring to follow him. I would ask you this question: how can you not be positive when God is so good to you? How does that happen? God is too good to be negative about life. The blessings of God and the goodness of God are seen over and over and over again. And anyone who is his follower should have an optimistic, positive, faith-filled attitude. That's the facts, Jack. Now, if you don't believe that, let's go back to the Bible. Here's ancient wisdom from the book of Psalms. This day belongs to the Lord. Let's celebrate and be glad today. The old translation says, this is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad. Our attitude should be, this is the day the Lord has made, and I'm going to be glad, and I'm going to be happy, and I'm going to have a good attitude. And that isn't, oh, it's Sunday. No, that is every day. This is the day the Lord has made. I'm going to be glad. I'm going to have the right attitude. Things aren't always going to go my way. You may be in the middle of a big problem, and we'll get to that in a moment. But here's the thing. This is the day the Lord has made. Let's go on. Always be glad. Why? Because of the Lord. And I will say it again, be glad. Always be glad. Why? Because of the Lord. Because of the Lord. The day belongs to the Lord. Be happy and positive. How can you always be positive? Because of the Lord. As long as you have the Lord in your life, you can be positive. As long as you have the Lord in your life, you can be optimistic. As long as you have the Lord in your life by faith, you have him in your life by faith, then you can walk by faith and trust that God will take care of you. And as long as you think that way, you will always be happy. It's a habit. You practice, it determines your happiness. You can be excited about your dreams. You can be excited about your goals because you know that the Lord is with you. And let's just look at that one final scripture. I can do all things. I can do all of this through him who gives me strength. The Bible says I can do all things. I can do this. Why? Because the Lord gives me strength. I can do it because I have the Lord in my life. I can do it. It can happen. That's a faith-filled attitude. I can do it. Not I can't do it. I can do it. Can-do attitude is a uniquely Christian attitude. Many other people borrow it, but it comes right out of the Bible. I can do. Not I can't do. I can do. I can do. I can do it through Christ who gives me the strength. I can do all things through Christ who empowers me, who strengthens me, who helps me to be able to do it. We should be the most enthusiastic people in the entire world, Christ followers. By the way, the word enthusiasm, let's just break it down. N-E-N means in. Enthusiasm comes from the word theos. The word theos means God. Theology, study of God. In God. To be enthusiastic means to be in God. Who are the people who are in God? The followers of Christ who have a personal relationship with God through Jesus Christ. So logically then, the most enthusiastic people in the whole world are Christians. You can say it. It's okay. The most enthusiastic people in the world are us. We're the most enthusiastic. Well, Pastor Rick, I don't like what's going on, and things are happening in this country, and even you have written and talked about it, so yeah, I'm well aware of it because I have done those things. That doesn't mean that you have to be negative. It doesn't mean that you have to go negative. It doesn't mean that you lose your enthusiasm, because there are bad things happening and there are good things happening. And that is called what? Life. Life. Welcome to the human condition. That's the nature of how it is. Good things, bad things. You don't wait till everything's going your way to be happy. You'll never be happy. You don't wait to meet the perfect person, get married. You'll never get married. I have a wonderful spouse, but the potted plants, the cut flowers, I mean, it's a deal breaker. Okay. We laugh because it's so ridiculous. And then you must think about your own life and ask yourself, are there some rather ridiculous things going on in my head? Your attitude determines your happiness. Your attitude defines your relationships. Your attitude defines your relationships. I said in the first habit series that enjoying relationships is one of the habits of a happy person. So you see the connection here is enormous, because relationships determine happiness and attitude defines your relationships. What do you mean, Pastor Rick? I mean this. The Pope quoted it to Congress, so let's just say Jesus' marvelous words today. Do unto others as, say it with me, you would have them do unto you. Treat others the way how you want to be treated. This is the kind of attitude that one has. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Here's another way of looking at it. Put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Walk a little bit in their shoes before you decide that, you're going to get all negative and you're going to be all difficult. Just let that thought sit in your mind for a moment. What would it be like if roles were reversed? Here's what I know. You attract who you are. You surround yourself with certain people. And I believe it has a lot to do with your attitude. A long time ago, I determined this. I'm going to surround myself with eagles, not turkeys. That's what I decided. I'm going to soar with the eagles. I am not going to waddle around with the turkeys. I am not going to fear Thanksgiving every year. I'm just going to soar above it all. Now, I love the Eagles. I mean, my school, Boston College, are the Eagles, and I've seen a lot of great eagle pictures and sculptures, and I've read a lot about eagles. And what can I tell you about eagles? Eagles are amazing. Eagles have such incredible eyesight. They can look 1,000 feet, be flying 1,000 feet in the air and spot a fish in the water. Then eagles are so incredibly powerful and fast that they can whiz down 1,000 feet to go get that fish, and then they've got such marvelously powerful, strong talons that they can grab a hold of that fish, and the whole thing is done like that. They are something else. They soar. Matter of fact, eagles soar against the wind. Most birds fly how? With the wind. That's what eagles do. Eagles are unique. Eagles do not fly in flocks. You got to go find eagles. You want to hang out with the crowd over here, they're easy to find. The turkeys will always be together, ready to get slaughtered. The eagles you'll have to go find. Your attitude's going to determine the kind of people that are around you, and if you don't like the folks that are around you, my suggestion to you is change your attitude, and it'll change who you attract. You live in the moment. You enjoy the regular events of life. Here's what far too many of you are doing. You're living for the big moments. You're tolerating life until you can go on the big adventure, until you can have the big trip, until you can do the fun thing. Your life is ordered incorrectly because the fun times are great, But you can't have a positive, optimistic, faith-filled attitude while you tolerate the majority of mundane life, waiting for the few highlights in life. That is not going to work. You can't be happy doing that, because you'll only have moments of happiness. You'll only have these moments when it's thrilling, and you need more moments than you can possibly have in that way to have the habit of happiness. So you have to learn how to get happiness out of everyday life with the people that you're in relationship with. And then when you have the highlights, well, yeah, then those are just extra super special. And you find a way then easily to enjoy them. And I say find a way, you find a way to remember them. My wife literally came home yesterday. It's like this stuff just, I can't even understand it. With a box that she purchased and paid for. A box. I said, hey, it's a nice box you have there, dear. Oh, yeah. I'm going to fill it with stuff from our trip to Italy, and I'm going to hang it on the wall. I said, okay. Why are you going to do that? Because then we can look at it and remember. And even though I don't understand the box or the hanging of the box, I do understand the essential concept. Look at it and remember the good times. I'm all for it. Knock yourself out. Fill your box. Don't ask me to help, but fill your box. And when your box is filled, I will look at it and I will remember all those good times. And that's great. But you can't, the dream trips, they just don't happen very often. You've got to find a way to make life happy now. Undertaking new things, having new experiences, meeting new people. This is how you move your life in the direction of a happier, positive, optimistic, faith-filled attitude. Your attitude can change problems. Yes, it can. You say, I don't believe that, Pastor Rick. Well, I do, and here it is. You might want to write this down. The problem is not the problem. The problem is your attitude about the problem. Oh, that's worth saying again. The problem is not the problem. The problem is your attitude about the problem. There will always be problems. And everyone said, amen to that, Reverend. Yeah, there will always be problems. There will always be problems. So forget about this, I'll be positive when I don't have any problems. The problem is not the problem. The problem is your attitude about the problem. How do you think about the problem? How do you think in your mind about the problem? You can look at it and you can get miserable about it and make everybody miserable around you, or you can have a more positive, optimistic, faith-filled way of looking at problems. Because problems are nothing more than challenges that need to be overcome. How do you overcome the challenge? How do you do it? And you don't have to know that. All you have to do is know what the problem is and see how God might work it out. Let me tell you a great story. Maybe you know this. I'm always amazed at people who don't. The Statue of Liberty story. Do you know the Statue of Liberty story? This guy from France, whose name was Auguste Bartholdi, was a sculptor, an artist. He went to Egypt. He saw the pyramids. He got very inspired. He met another Frenchman whose name was Ferdinand de Lesseps. He wanted to build a canal. You have the Mediterranean, you have the Red Sea, you have a problem. There's a little piece of land in between. Let's build a canal, the Suez Canal, and we'll be able to cut right through. And we'll be able to go between the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. Brilliant idea. Bartholdi says, let's have a lighthouse at the entrance to the canal. And he began to work, and he had drawings, and he made clay models, and he had it, and he was ready to go. And he designed this marvelous lighthouse. And it was a lady with a robe, and in one hand she had the tablets of justice, and in the other hand she had the torch that would light the way. Problem was, people had money to build the canal. No one wanted to give the money to put this marvelous monument up at the beginning of the Suez Canal. And so this Lady Liberty with justice and a torch never happened. And he went back to France, a defeated man. But then his government came calling and said, we want to give a gift to the American people. And Bartholdi said, I have the perfect gift. And now sitting in New York Harbor is this lady, higher than any sphinx, holding the book of justice, holding the lamp of liberty, welcoming people into the major city, maybe the most major, I think, the most major city. If it's the most major city of America, and America is the most major city in the world, there it is. Now, he could have had his monument in Cairo. Not a bad place. At the Suez Canal, that's important. But if I said Suez Canal or New York Harbor, which would you choose? The problem ended up being resolved. God has a way of working out the problems. Your job is to keep a good attitude. God will work it out. You just keep a good attitude while he works it out. Psychologists call it your explanatory style. Explanatory, like explanation. Your explanatory style. In other words, how do you explain to yourself the things that happen in your life? And what they say is you need to have a positive explanatory style, where when you run into problems and difficulties, your natural explanation is to think of it in positive terms as a challenge to be overcome, not in negative terms as a problem that can't be solved. How are you explaining the problems in your life? Challenges to be overcome, problems that cannot be solved. You need to get to the place where you say, problems can be solved, they're just challenges. In fact, maybe through this challenge, I will discover something that I didn't know before. Maybe God will use this problem to bring the necessary changes that need to be made in my life. God will use pain to get our attention so that we might make the changes we need to make so we can become the person that God created us to be. Our role is to stay positive through that process. No one likes pain. No one volunteers for it. But we understand that sometimes surgery is necessary to bring healing. Yes? No one gets excited about surgery. But the result of the surgery is very good. We're happy. When I had this kidney stone, I mean, woo! It was just miserable, and they had to do a little surgery. I didn't like that. Not a bit, but I'm very happy about not having a kidney stone anymore. So you have to sometimes go through a little pain to get the healing. Your attitude can change your problems, and your attitude makes all the difference. That's really what it comes down to. It makes all the difference in the world. I want to read to you from the famous quote from Chuck Swindoll. I quote parts of it. I'm going to read the whole thing to you just as it's in my office. The longer I live, the more I realize the impact of attitude on life. Attitude is more important than facts. It's more important than the past, than education, than money, than circumstances, than failures, than successes, than what other people think or say or do. Attitude is more important than appearance, giftedness, or skill. Attitude will make or break a company, a church, a home. Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to what happens to you. The remarkable thing about it is you have a choice. You get to choose. You don't choose what happens to you. You choose how you think about what happens to you. You decide, this is the day the Lord has made. I will be glad. Because of the Lord, I will be glad. I can do anything because of Christ that's in me. I will be positive. I will be optimistic. I will be faith-filled. And I will not allow anything to stand in the way. I'll keep being positive. I will undertake new things, and I will expect them to be successful. That's a positive attitude. That's what faith is all about. I will expect them to be successful. I don't know how this happened. I guess this LinkedIn, sometime when I joined it, I filled out stuff. And anyway, I started getting all these congratulations from people. Hey, congratulations on your 22 years of anniversary. And I thought, okay, yeah, great. 22 years. 22 years ago, I came here to Richmond, Virginia to start a church no one ever heard of, and no one ever could even conceive that you would do contemporary modern music, and people would come to church not dressed up, and on and on and on it goes. And I had a belief that I expected it to be successful. And it wasn't easy, but it has been an even greater success. The reach of this church goes far beyond what I could have imagined it would be. We have to expect it. If you expect it, you position yourself to receive it. You receive the good things in life because you expect to receive them. Now, here's the thing that can happen. Some people, even when they receive the good things in life, they refuse to see those as good things. They see them as just happenstance or luck or coincidence. They dismiss them as arbitrary or inconsistent. And this, by the way, psychologists call learned unhappiness. Learned unhappiness. You have learned how to look at everything in life and figure out how it's not good. You have learned to question the good things and put them in hoppers that say coincidence, luck, happenstance, not going to happen all the time, just an inconsistent, just a once-in-a-lifetime thing. You can learn to be happy. You can learn to be unhappy. You get to choose how are you going to look at any situation. The guy that, I told this story, but I just love telling this story. The guy comes into the emergency room. He's somebody that has been shot. They start asking him questions, and the first thing they ask is, are you allergic to anything? And he said, yes. And whenever you say yes, you gain the attention of the doctors and nurses because they want to know what you're allergic to before they treat you. And so they stopped working, and they looked at him, and he yelled, bullets. And they started laughing, and he said, listen, operate on me like I'm going to live, not like I'm going to die. You can look at people's faces, and they can look very stern, and they can look very nervous, and you have to decide, what am I going to say to these folks? I'm going to say we can do it. I'm going to say it can happen. When I gather our team together this morning, and we're on to plan number 3, I have to look at them and say, what? We're going to make this work. Just do your role. Don't try to do more than you can do. Just do what you can do. And you do what you can do, and God will do what only He can do, and it'll all work out. And that's the kind of attitude that you have to have about life. Your attitude is the difference, friends. It's the difference between winning and losing. It's the difference between success and failure. It is the difference between happiness and unhappiness. And you get to choose.
Pastor Rick will return in just a moment with some closing words of encouragement. Before he does, I wanted to remind you about our webpage, www.highimpactliving.com. It's your resource for a high-impact life.
Let's pray together. Will you close your eyes with me? Lord, I just pray for every person listening to my voice right now. And I don't know who I might be talking to. I'm talking to that person who's learned to be unhappy. They look at every situation, including the good ones, and they figure out a way to interpret it in a way that's negative, to discount it in some kind of way, rather than just see it as a blessing from you and a part of your blessings, not a one-time thing, not a coincidence, not a happenstance, but just a regular part of your blessings. I pray for that person that has got a big problem, and they're so down about the problem that they've gotten themselves so negative that they can't even be optimistic. And I pray that you're going to help them to realize that the problem isn't the problem is their attitude about the problem, and you can help them change their attitude. And the moment they change their attitude, things are going to be different. Even if their circumstances don't change, their attitude change is going to change them. I pray for that person that wants to be positive, wants to be faith-filled, but they battle it. They battle their sort of pessimistic nature. They call themselves a realist, but they know deep down inside it's not being a realist. It's just that they struggle. They struggle with their negative thoughts and their pessimism. And what they need is to begin to be more faith-filled, to say, this is the day the Lord has made. Because of you, Lord, I can be glad. I can be happy. I can be positive. I can do all things through you, Christ, because you give me the strength. And they need to shift into that way of thinking, that optimism and that faith. And I pray that you'll help them to do that. You want people to be happy, and the way that they're happy is when they're positive. And when the way they're positive is when they believe what you teach us to believe, which is to rejoice in you and in the day that you've made and in the fact that you can help us through any situation. And I pray that you will help each and every person listening to my voice today to be able to do that. And I pray that in your name, Jesus. Amen.